why do sports persist even though we have machines that are far better than we could ever be at, like, putting a ball into a hoop or throwing a disc far, or like running really fast. Like, who needs to run anywhere, right? Like, why are we obsessed with these things? Swimming? We're not made to swim, right? We're like, you in the ocean, you're the slowest thing in the ocean.
I emailed Josh Kushner last year. He responded to my email like twice, and he passed on the show at that moment. But since then, like I've been a big fan of the work that he did at Thrive and how the firm got built and where it is now. Then I found out about Miles. Then I found out about you. That's why I reached out to you. And
I'm surprised that I'm that high up on that secrets. A lot of other people they're you should have learned about before.
we'll take a step back there. Before we get into the other stuff like the Thrive and other things too, let's start with Chris. Who are you?
Sure. Who am I? Who am I? It's a good question. Let's see. I grew up in the suburbs of San Francisco. Um,
Mhm.
I'm the youngest of three. I'm pretty sure I'm a stereotypical youngest child. Uh, I spent a lot of time on the internet. I think probably too much time. Um,
So,
you know, AOL chat rooms, BattleNet, playing Blizzard's franchises online, MIRC. I think the first time I downloaded MIRC was back in the day before smartphones. There were these things called pocket PCs or PDAs, personal digital assistants. And, as a teenager that, was messing around with these things, I couldn't afford the software for them. So, like, you join these channels to figure out how to get free software and download it onto your phone. Uh, out of necessity is the mother of invention. Um, but I think the first time I realized the power of the internet was selling things on eBay. First, it was Pokemon cards, and then it was in-game items in Diablo 2. And that was this like incredible moment where I was like, wait a minute, this thing doesn't exist physically. I'm selling it for real money, and like fulfilling the order is meeting in game and just transferring this digital item to this person. All right. Yeah. Let's go. Internet. Come on. Super exciting. Um, anyways, fast forward. I studied economics, psychology in college. I was really interested in behavioral economics, why people do certain things and why people don't do certain things. The traditional view of in economics, there's this concept of homo economicus, right? Homo economicus is perfectly rational man. Um, um, like homo economicus wouldn't play the lottery because the expected value of a lottery ticket is less than what you pay for it. So why would anyone do that? Yet Homo sapien plays the lottery. So what's the difference? And I feel like behavioral economics was able to explain a lot of that and continues to this day to be one of the areas where I turn to understand anthropologically humanity and like why humans do what we do. Graduated from college, didn't have a job. Knew I wanted to live in New York, so I made my way here. Um, very like backwards, stumbled into the tech ecosystem here. Uh, reached out to all my friends who pointed me as Jean Kushner, and he and I were classmates in college, and he was starting Thrive, and I obviously didn't have a job, and so I, said, "I'll wash bottles. I'll do whatever you need," and uh, that was almost 15 years. That's 15 years ago, and it was first time I'd ever done venture. I learned a lot of it on the job. Was at Thrive for 5 funds, and I loved every moment of it. And I left about 6 years ago to help start Pace Capital. And
Hmm.
I think in theory, you make fewer mistakes the second time around. I think in practice, uh, you make more mistakes. They're just ones. And but it's been really, really, really fun. Total privilege, I think, to do this as a profession. I feel incredibly lucky and fortunate, and particularly to be able to do it during an era of dramatic technical change, such as the one we're caught and the one that we have been in for the past few years, and what I expect to last for another decade.
You're also semi-weeb.
Semi? No. I'm a full-on weeb. There's no shame in being a weeb. We can go bar for bar on anime, or go band for band.
I know you love the Bleach Shinigami arc. I do too.
I mean, let's be real. That's the best arc. And then I feel like it kind of runs out of gas a little bit. Um, I there's a, I really I've started to really appreciate miniseries, um, or like bookended anime. So like Cyberpunk Edge Runners to me is just like the constraint of needing it to end is actually, like, in some ways, like a high form, like an incredible creative constraint. Or if you look at you know, some of these anime that it's just it's one season, or uh that's it. Um I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Death Note, right? They're just like, you know what? That's it. You get 2 seasons and that's it. Um there's
You should
no
watch Orb. There's this new thing, new anime. I haven't seen and I've heard a lot about it. ORB. Orb.
ORB. I will add it to my to the
Heard it?
list.
I read the backstory of it. It's sort of in the Polish times, like before people believed that the Earth was heliocentric.
Hmm.
When people believed that the planets revolve around the Earth rather than Earth revolving around the Sun, and it shows like the whole how that change took about. So I think you'll enjoy that.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the recommendation.
You have pretty good taste in anime too. Before we move it, how do you will I just say get to the point instead of like reading on the bush here? How do you define sort of taste? Like everyone on Twitter is talking about it. No one knows what it means. People throw it around a lot. How do you use it? Use the word?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I wish I had a very succinct answer, and maybe I'll work my way to a succinct answer, but if you'll permit me to kind of like
Yeah, good.
talk about it a little bit. Um, let's look at sports for a moment, right?
Sure. Mhm.
We as humans are obsessed with sports, right? And if you think about it, what what are sports? Uh, why are we so obsessed with sports? We have machines that can do physically the thing that we're asking humans to do million times better, more effective than any human. Yet we're still obsessed with watching humans do the thing. Kind of weird, right?
Very
Um, so why do sports persist, even though we have machines that are far better that we could ever be at, like, putting a ball into a hoop, or throwing a disc far, or like running really fast. Like, who needs to run anywhere, right? Like, why are we obsessed with these things? Um, like, it's so funny. Like swimming, we're not made to swim, right? We're like, you in the ocean, you're the slowest thing in the ocean. Um, and so I think sports is a good. Our obsession with sports is helpful insight to understand why we care about taste. So what is taste? I would argue that taste is the way, like, taste is human opinions that are uniquely producible by humans and uniquely valued by humans.
Uh,
And so, where we talk about sports, right? Like, what are sports? Sports are like these things that we can do physically that other humans really appreciate. Um, there's this sort of aspect of humans valuing the output of humans for just the sake of it being the output of other humans. And the humanness is actually endemic to its appreciation, right? We're like so obsessed with, um, let's say like doping in sports, right? Oh, like that's not human. And so as soon as it becomes not human, all of a sudden it violates the sanctity of what is true. So what's interesting about taste is I can see it as this realm where, yeah, it's like judgment, it's opinions that are human, and it really matters that it's produced by a human. Um, and so, hmm, I mean, that's an abstract definition of it. What is it in like a literal sense? I would say taste literally is curiosity and exposure compounded over time and passed through sort of like a synthesis filter, um, constantly comparing, uh, you know, points in space against each other, um, and passing that all through this sort of like social reflexivity function of what is good taste, what's bad taste, what do humans care about, what do humans care about in this moment in time in this specific area. Like, taste is also the quality of taste is also uniquely judged by humans. Um, and so, it's no surprise to me that as AI continues to advance against things that have historically been bastions of human excellence, that humanity is retreating to areas that are uniquely human and only humans are capable of. That makes sense to me. It's sort of like, you know, like, uh, like we're so comparative. We care so much about competition and like how we show up relative to other people. Like, let's look at wealth. So, um, one way to measure success is wealth. It's a number, but at some point, numbers were not enough as a comparative axis. And then you retreat to time, right? It's like, oh, you're old money. Oh, you're not old money, you're new money. And so humanity retreats to this like more impregnable defensive position of time, which you actually can't reproduce. There's no way to catch up in time. And so humanity is obsessed with like finding these grounds of defensibility, particularly when they're confronted with new competitive dynamics.
if I were to summarize your definition of taste, would you say it's like taste is the correct ratio of perfection with error?
Hmm. I think that's like a decent approximation. I think maybe the challenge with that definition is that that can hold true for, and it lends itself to like quantitative and objective measure. And I think where taste ends up having the greatest efficacy is in areas of subjectivity and qualitativeness. Um, I would say taste at its core is the ability to precisely pinpoint inferiority and superiority. Now, recognize that that is like reflexively defined because it's relativistic. Uh, but and I think you acquire taste necessarily through observing a large data set because you need perspective in order to be able to pinpoint where something exists on a quality spectrum.
But then when you like, observe large data set, a lot of people, not a lot of people, few people I've talked to have sort of recommended this too. But what the first thing that comes to sort of my mind is when you uh, train yourself on large data set of things to develop your taste. Anything outside of that realm, which sort of develops new taste, looks bad to you. It doesn't fit in your data set. How do you deal with that in that case?
Sure. Um, so new isn't necessarily bad. Um, New is only bad if your definition of bad is that it's not validated yet. So the absence of good doesn't mean that it's bad. Um, I would sort of like point us towards the definition of like in venture, we're obsessed with non-consensus investing, right?
Yeah.
And I would say non-consensus breaks out into two semantically similar but distinct definitions. There is anti-consensus, which is contrarian, and there is pre-consensus, which is you're just there before there is consensus. And what's funny is I think a lot of investors confuse. I mean, I think there's a lot more alpha in being pre-consensus than there is being contrarian. Contrarian is pretty derivative. You're basically allowing it's just as consensus of thinking as just being consensus. You're just taking the not set of the consensus rather than true independent thinking, which requires you to be in areas and reach conviction before other data points exist. And so let's bring it back to the taste question. Let's say you train on a lot of information, you develop a ton of like perspective, and then something new emerges. Um, that's where you can actually be pre-consensus. Like taste, I would say there's something that exists the same in taste as in venture. Being non-consensus in taste is valued because it's independent thinking, but being anti-consensus, you're just being pedantic. And so really the best way to have good taste is you are pre-consensus. You are constantly searching for the things that are new. Um, there's this great, like Ratatouille is an incredible movie for any number of reasons. Hmm. In addition to um, uh, it being a great movie, Anton Ego has one of the best monologues at the end of the movie, um, which basically says that as a critic, like nothing you can do as a critic holds a candle to the people that are doing the thing. So him as a critic, as a food critic, I think at the end of the movie, he realizes that even the smallest ounce of creation by a chef exceeds all of the value of most critics. But critics are uniquely positioned to deliver value to society when they champion the new. When there's something that hasn't yet reached consensus, and maybe society hasn't figured out how to think about it, but critics have seen enough that they can take a stand and say that it is good for any number of reasons and should be paid attention to.
Can you be both anti-consensus and pre-consensus?
I think so. I think so, but that would require an existing industry to go through, say, tectonic shift, right?
Yeah.
So to be anti-consensus and pre-consensus, there has to be some level of consensus. So it has to be established as an industry, and then that existing industry needs to be undergoing tectonic shift, and then that tectonic shift, like you can both be pre-consensus to where it's going, and also anti-consensus because it's not where the industry currently is.
What do you think are you? And where have you been most of your life?
That's a really good question. I think like my knee-jerk answer, which is almost certainly self-serving, is I think that I've been most successful being pre-consensus rather than anti-consensus. Um, it's funny though, because it seems like anti-consensus gets rewarded more on Twitter than pre-consensus does, necessarily and almost definitionally. But I find myself hanging out in pockets of the internet that aren't really populated. At least not at the time that I find myself hanging out there. And so I tend to be pre-consensus. Yeah, you know, when I was at Thrive, the first deal I ever led, the first board I ever joined was Twitch, which was live stream video games. And I think at the time, that was a really, no one really, not no one, but I don't think that that company was understood well.
Yeah.
It's very well understood now, but at the time, it was very hard for people to wrap their heads around. Wait, like, why would you watch somebody else play a video game? Why wouldn't you just play a video game yourself? You know, all these sort of questions that um, implied a level of like not understand that this. Some of the other companies that I led while I was at Thrive, Patreon, which is arguably like one of the first creator economy companies, Unity, which was, you know, at the time it was a very successful game engine. Continue to go on and do well. Grailed is a men's fashion marketplace, and we invested when like the idea of men's fashion was such a strange, you know, like why would you do men's fashion? Why wouldn't you just do women's fashion? Women's fashion is so much larger of a market. Um, so I think by nature of being a new junkie, I love new things. Um, love tilling soil at the edges. And I think it ends up putting me in pre-consensus more often than anti-consensus.
Why do you trust your taste?
It's a good question. It's funny. I know a few areas that I perfectly mistrust my taste. Um, like when it comes to fashion, I really like it. It's probably not going to be a big business. Like probably, you know, it's no chance. Like it's too esoteric. But also like if I hate it, has probably a good shot of becoming a big business. Um, uh, which is to say, like I really dislike mass things. Um, I think like the mass affluent trend of consumer products that we went through regrettably in like the late aughts was, oh my gosh, terrible. terrible. We just got like the market got flooded through this combination of Facebook marketing and Shopify with and like venture capital with these like terrible brands that like I mean, I'm sure they're good businesses. I think a lot of them probably have done well, but I just from a taste perspective, I don't really care for them or it's somebody else's taste rather. Um, so from a commercial perspective, I know that I can perfectly mistrust my taste when it comes to the commercial success of fashion. Um, you asked the question where do I trust my taste in this? Um, hmm, when do I trust my taste? I mean, I feel like you have to trust your taste, period. Now, it's not going to be right all the time, but you kind of have to trust your taste and just assume that it's getting better over time. Now, uh, you should be able to look back at yourself a year ago or 2 years ago and maybe like cringe at your level of taste then. And that suggests that you're getting better. Um, but I think taste is only as good as its rate of improvement because it is not this sort of immutable fixed quantity that exists inside of people. Like if somebody has great taste, but they're cut off from internalizing new data, there's a half-life decay associated with the excellence of that taste.
This is something I was talking to someone the other day too. Would you categorize taste as sort of like you talk about a quality or sort of like a feeling, like I don't know, love. You can't define love, and but you can't categorize love anywhere. Or if you would you categorize taste in the feelings category or the qualities category?
Um, I think like it's probably both, but it's probably more quality than it is feeling. I think feeling sometimes is the indescribable impact of a lot of things. And so even if we can't articulate why we feel the way that we do, if you really sat down and spend time dissecting it, you'd probably be able to get there. Right. Like, let's take like the Michelin guide for a sec. If you're familiar with a Michelin guide, like 1-star restaurant, 2-star restaurant.
Yeah. Oh, already. Yeah.
So like a 3-star Michelin restaurant is one of the best restaurants in the world. I'm going to guess that when a restaurant reviewer who works for Michelin sits down at a restaurant, they have an incredibly rigorous framework for judging the quality of that meal, the service, the quality of the food, the thought behind it. Um, and just because it's qualitative rather than quantitative doesn't mean that it's any less rigorous of an analysis. Um, I think in tech, we have this fetishization for numbers, things that can be quantitatively defined, things that we can understand, like shape rotator brains can understand. And as soon as we like enter into the realm of subjectivity or quality or, qualitative, then we just like lose it, right? You ask any person what good taste is on tech Twitter, and they'll probably, tell you that it's like the Eames armchair and like the Noguchi cup, and that's what good taste is. And it's like, oh man, we have a lot of work to do. Um, and so uh, I would say quality. Um, I think there is good taste, there is bad taste. I think it's pretty clear. It's pretty obvious if somebody has good taste and pretty obvious if somebody has bad taste. And so even if we ourselves don't have good taste or bad, like good, even if we don't have good taste, we can tell when someone has good taste.
What do you think does tech Twitter get wrong about taste? You talked a little bit about that.
Oh boy. How do I not make enemies here?
Analyst versus tech Twitter.
Oh boy. Tech has a really funny relationship with fashion and art and culture in general, I think. Um, it's been described about before, but let's take fashion for a sec. Uh, I think a lot of people in tech pride themselves almost as like a badge of honor of like, oh, I don't care about fashion. I care about like the important things, like, you know, da 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 da. And what's funny about that is if like tech kind of cares a lot about fashion, right? If you show up to a startup office wearing a suit, like people would look at you like you had a third eye. But like, want it? I mean, like, it's funny. Like, tech has just as much of a dress code as Wall Street does, as like, other professional workplaces, and so it's coded. It's coded, but that coding isn't understood as coding. Like the homogeneity of it isn't embraced as homogeneity. Like if you asked a lawyer what like what their dress code is, they would just tell you exactly what it is and they'd be able to articulate it. If you asked a engineer or like a PM what your dress code is, they would probably give you some like convoluted answer of like, oh, like we don't really care about dress codes and so tech is this really strange relationship. And I think it is because deep down inside, a lot of people in tech are afraid that it's not a realm of expertise for them. And, we like competing in areas that we feel like we have competency in. And so as soon as we step into an arena that it doesn't feel like we have a competitive advantage in, we start to break out in hives. Um, I think the other challenge with tech's relationship with the arts largely is like let's look at philanthropy in San Francisco or and philanthropy in other places in the country or the world. I think one of the challenges with technology is the first thing that people do when they make money in San Francisco is they leave San Francisco. And it's funny because I think a lot of founders feel like they, when they are successful, they achieve success in spite of the system. Like the system was actively trying to hold them back. And the system is like the government and culture and society. Um, and things like the arts gets lumped into that. Um, and so when people are successful and they're successful in spite of the system, they feel no need to give back to the system and they just leave.
They aren't obliged to do it, are they?
No, they're not. They're not obliged. They're actually like it's like, but it's an artifact of the ecosystem. Let's look at a city like New York as a different example.
Yeah.
You look at New York and you look at the level of involvement in nonprofits in New York. It's very like people love getting involved in nonprofits here. And it's like why? Why do people care so much about nonprofits? Well, like for better or for worse, a lot of people that are successful in New York are successful because of the system. And getting more involved in the system tends to be advantageous. And so you have this like really strong feedback loop that is plowing a lot of money and time and power and influence right back into the arts. Um, and so a fluency in the arts is actually rewarded. It's advantaged in a way that it's not in tech. And so you have this like really interesting dynamic where because it's not rewarded in tech, there never is this Darwinian fitness function that's encouraging it. And then as soon as people have money, they're like, okay, what am I supposed to spend this money on? Let me just go to design within reach and just buy up the entire catalog, not knowing that that's basically, I mean, I'm not here to say design within reach is not good taste, but anyone can do that. And when anyone can do that, um, it doesn't really say anything about you. It just says that you have money and you knew how to press a buy button.
If I go back to the San Francisco example, where you know about people, the if you put it in the we put it in a way that taste is diverse in tech. If you were to, do you do that?
Is taste diverse in technology? My knee-jerk answer would be that taste is not diverse in technology. Taste is very homogenous in technology. And if you look, all it takes is like looking at, you know, a company like Allbirds. You get that, great, you know, mm, we're all or and but yeah, I think my answer would be that taste is pretty uniform in technology.
But like in relation to the one thing which I think is like the greatest thing about tech as compared to any other sort of ecosystem that's out there, that's very open. So you can be like anyone from, you can be a random kid in India who can like do stuff on the internet, and the reason with that is that it's extremely open. Why doesn't that lead to more differences in taste? And if you know what I mean.
I mean, there's one answer, which is good taste requires judgment. Like you have to judge things against each other. And so that kind of is at odds with an openness.
Mhm.
Um, I'm sure there are people in technology, like I'm sure there are individuals in technology who have great taste. Um, but it's not a prerequisite. And it certainly isn't selected for to be successful in tech the way that it might be selected for to be successful in other industries.
Uh, do you think AI caused it to become selective? Yes. AI doesn't have taste, does it?
I would say like AI does not have taste as like, as a function of like, I think taste is probably uniquely human and uniquely valued by humans, by other humans. So I don't think AI is capable of having good taste. I think we'll start caring. I think like taste will matter a lot more, probably, um, because we can get machines to do the thing that we don't want to do. You know, like we still care a lot about people playing chess, even though that like stock, sure, like the best, just wipes the floor against any human player. So like maybe like at some point we like really care about like human like lead code evals, um, like competitively in a way that like is entertainment because
Yeah,
because we're still like holding up.
professional
Mm,
professional lead code championship.
exactly, exactly. Um, but like the competency in it will cease to be an economically productive. The broader competency in it will cease to be an economically productive like engine um, outside of entertainment. So it'll shift from being like productive from like a labor hour perspective, and it will move to being like value generative from like a leisure hour perspective.
A lot of things that are right now. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of things that are things to check competency of humans will become things to make us an entertaining machine. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Yeah, that's a different thing that I haven't heard before. How do you think, like, will that change happen? Because when that does, when you move from that thing specifically, if we take lead code as an example, which is used to test the proficiency of the programmer, if you take that to the entertainment perspective, what happens to that? Does that remain the same? Does that get better, or does AI take over? What do you think happens there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like we're still going to be obsessed with humans competing against each other. So like, I think we'll probably still have like like engineering competitions. Um, they're just like not going to be additive from like a GDP output. Like human based software engineering just not going to be like that productive. Um, in like a economic definition of the word. Um, it'll be like a hobby, um,
Yeah.
rather than a profession. Kind of the way that like, you know, like being an internal combustion engine enthusiast now is kind of like a hobby in the in the
Uh-huh.
in the age of electric vehicles. And you kind of have to be really obsessed with it because it's actually just like not that great of a solution. It's just been like outclassed from a technology perspective.
Will basically become unmonetizable and monetizable.
Yeah,
They can't make money off it.
I think so. I think so. For better or for worse. And look, I wrote the end of software blog post.
The last lines, famous last.
I take no proclaiming the end of of a lot of like effort productively.
Mm-hmm.
I will say though, I caught a lot of flack for that, and it
Is it?
seems look, I saw a tweet go viral over the weekend about something about like, look, if you're a CS engineer or like if you're like a software engineer, just like give up. Um, it's funny how those tweets are going viral now, but earlier in the year I was getting pitchforked for it. Uh, uh,
You're just breaking fences.
say that I was consensus. It's pretty wild though. We have
The-
who would have thought that well, I forget when like the shape rotator word cell meet.
Yeah, Peter Thiel said that, I think.
Yeah. Who would have thought that like it's the shape rotors that are just
Shape rotators take over.
well no, funnily enough, like the word I would say that I would make the argument that the word cells are taking over and the shape rotations are basically commoditized. Um and I think it's funny if you go into every software engineering subreddit or artificial intelligence subreddit, you'll see like, is it the end of software engineering? And people like are just coping in the replies. They're being like, no, like it's not gonna happen. And they're all like propping each other's answers up because of confirmation bias and like voting each other's answers up. It's like it's so clear what's happening. Like it's it's I think we are at the precipice of, like an incredible like democrative shift or democratizing
Yeah.
shift, right? So I think what's really cool is the idea of software development or engineering will no longer be limited to people who can code, right? Anyone will be capable of creating software the same way that like, with the advent of Instagram, anyone was capable of photography. And so we're just, it's going to be amazing. We're just going to see this Cambrian explosion of software being produced. Um, and yeah, the idea of who is a software engineer or who is a developer, um, will just fundamentally change. I would be shocked if like any person that's been successful on Instagram over the last however many years ever knew what a dark room looks like, or like has ever developed film. And so, if you told me that people, people, in 5 years that are making software never knew what an IDE was, or never knew what like the terminal was, sure, that makes sense to me. Or, I think all computer languages, if you think about like binary, you start with like zeros and ones. Um, and then you abstract away from zeros and ones to like assembly and C and Python. And if you look at the way that computer languages abstract, they're just moving closer and closer away from zeros and ones towards natural language.
Yeah.
So the logical endpoint of computer languages is natural language. And so now with the advent of LLMs, we are here. You can talk to a computer using natural language, and there is no further abstraction. We're just perfectly conversant with machines in what we want, which is incredible because in every step of the way lower in abstraction, we needed translators that were able to translate between the abstracted layer of computer language with natural language.
I want to go back to the Instagram thing you talked about. Were you at Thrive during the Instagram deal?
Yeah, it was really fun. That was crazy. We were investors for 3 days.
Why did you guys decide to buy Instagram before it was very obvious per se?
Um, that the credit for that investment is entirely to Josh Kushner. Um, he, well, one, he was a user. He was a power user. Loved the product. Um, he often sent product feedback and ideas to Kevin Systrom. And because he was a power user, he developed a personal relationship with Kevin. And I don't think it was ever through a lens of we wanted to invest. He was just a true enthusiast of the product. Um, and then when they decided to raise money, uh, we had the opportunity to invest. It was also pretty funny. There were 4 firms that invested in that round of financing: Sequoia, Benchmark, Greylock, and then us.
So these are huge firms.
It was like one of these things is not like the other. Um, and but it, total testament to I would say Josh's product sensibilities and also him developing a relationship with the founder authentically. That was like non-transactional, but then happened to like materialize into an opportunity to invest.
Would you say Kevin and Co had taste?
Absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Um,
Was that obvious?
yes. Yes. It was very obvious. Um, I would say they both had taste, and Instagram as a product was such that good taste was rewarded. And so the team continually improved their taste because there was a Darwinian fitness function.
It's like, you talked about the Twitch too at the start, and I'm just like thinking of do all great consumer founders have good taste, or have you met ones that don't but still succeed? Success is relative. No naming. Maybe take some names.
Do all great consumer founders have good taste?
Yep,
No,
they don't.
definitely not. Um, it's not in a lot of ways, it's not necessary. It is not necessarily required. Um,
Yeah, we don't know this.
um, a lot of times, great consumer founders are able to capture lightning in a bottle. Um, Timing is really important. Right time, right place. Um, Having good taste doesn't necessarily advantage you in positioning yourself in the right time or right place with that lightning in a bottle. Um, and so I would say by and large, good taste is not common. And so if something isn't common, the likelihood that it is uniform in a random distribution is low. Uh, and so, yeah, I don't think you need good taste to be a great consumer founder. Um,
Did Justin at Twitch have it?
Did Justin? I mean, I don't. First of all, I don't think if you asked anyone like, "Is Twitch good taste?" I don't know if people would say, "Yeah,
Majority or most, yeah.
Twitch represents this sort of like paragon of taste." It is definitely a pinnacle of a subculture, which carving that out, using that as a measuring stick, Twitch is like very dominant. I think Twitch popularized the color purple for a lot of technology companies. Uh,
Yeah.
but I don't think I don't think you had to have good taste to be successful in building that sort of platform. Um, I think Justin, I mean, I'm sure, I don't know if you've ever seen any of the art car projects that he's been involved with for Burning Man. They're incredible. They're incredible.
It started out pretty scrappy too, if I'm not wrong. It started with like Justin.tv. Then they built it into
Justin TV, um, and then it pivoted to being Twitch. Um, yeah, yeah, no, those guys are great. All of them are great. Taste is just such a it's a funny topic in
Mhm.
technology because I think a lot of people in technology don't even know what they're talking about when they talk about taste. They know that it's something that is important, and in true kind of like technology fashion, people are quick to talk about and opine with confidence on things that maybe they don't have full perspective on. And so I think what's funny is you see a lot of people speaking sort of authoritatively about taste, and it's pretty clear that they don't know what they're talking about.
The start of this trend was also pretty weird. Like, it's sort of, I don't know how they popularized it, but one person said it went viral with it, and everyone started like, "This guy doesn't have good taste. That guy doesn't have good taste," and they don't know what taste is, and no one knows what taste is, and uh, it is weird. And I, I think I think we were able to come up with this random like specific area to define taste, if that makes sense. Uh,
I
but
think
if you were to give, yeah, go ahead.
the other thing is like there's very little upside in telling someone that they don't have good taste.
There's an ego boost that you get.
Well, um, so I think because there's very little upside in telling someone that
Yeah.
they don't have good taste, if someone thinks that they have good taste and never is told that they don't have good taste because nobody's incentivized to tell them that they don't have good taste, they're probably just going to continue thinking that they have good taste indefinitely.
Yeah. Wow.
it's like the dark forest of taste. Like no one's incentivized to say anything. And so, but it's yeah, and then you kind of have people who tell on themselves when they say that I have good taste, and they, you know, try to point something out of having good taste, and it's very clearly not that.
If you were to give like a single line definition for taste, how would you put it? It's tough, but yeah, if you were to.
Qualitative judgment.
Hmm. Yeah, that's close that you get.
Yeah.
So that, oh,
Accurate and precise qualitative judgment.
I think this is incredible. Like we ventured out a lot into like taste and all different things. Uh, this is definitely one of the best ones I've ever done. One question which I like to end with. Like I've been into startups and VC and all these things since I was like 11. What do you think is one fact that will blow 11-year-old me mind?
I mean, it's almost certainly something with in it's going to be regarding in LLMs or diffusion models. I think there's one thing where we have the technology to where you can imagine something, and then you can imagine something in your brain, and you're going to be able to produce that visual output through sufficient articulation. That's kind of crazy. Um,
Oh yeah, definitely.
so from a creative perspective, we have that. I think, the thing that like blows my mind even blows my like, 37-year-old Chris's mind is we can talk to computers now. It's crazy.
This continuous physics year to my mind too.
It's crazy. We can literally just communicate freely with computers in a way that like required interpreters, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
every single human, in order to talk to a computer, before LLMs required an interpreter. And now we can just go direct, which is so insane.
It will blow your mind a lot more because you like born into a world where you did not have even like a hint of talking to computers. I was born into a world where we could somewhat talk to computers a little bit, but you were like you've seen the whole transition from no talking to now being able to like converse in English, like any language per se. I think yeah, that's mine that blows my.
Blow like would blow. I think like the data point that would blow 11-year-old Advik's mind is that the podcast that you're running is going to reach tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions of viewers. And that's wild. Talk about marketplace of ideas, internet democratizing access and creating a meritocracy. Turns out you can just do stuff and
You cared?
you put things of value out into the world. Markets are efficient.
Definitely. That's what they'll try to do. And yeah, yes, I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the This is so good. I think that's it from my side. Anything you'd like to say?
No, I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful for you having me onto the pod. Thank you for the time.